St. Anthony Daniel, among the fires of faith. In the vast wilderness of 17th-century North America, where snow lies heavy on the forest floor and the night is lit only by the shimmer of stars, a single figure moves with quiet determination. His cloak, worn by years of travel, brushes against the frost-laden branches. His breath clouds in the frigid air. This is Father Anthony Daniel, a man whose footsteps would be written not in history books alone, but in the hearts of those he served, and in the very soil that drank his final prayer. Born in 1601 in the bustling port city of Dieppe, France, Anthony Daniel seemed destined for a comfortable life. A scholar, a Jesuit, a man of learning and reason. But in the stillness of prayer he heard a whisper that drew him far beyond the cobblestones of Europe, across a perilous ocean, to the raw, untamed wilderness of what would become Canada. To many, this was a land of danger and uncertainty. To Anthony Daniel, it was a vineyard waiting to bloom. His calling was not conquest, but communion. And so, with faith as his compass, he set sail, leaving behind comfort, security, and the familiar hum of the old world, to bring the gospel to the peoples of the new. When Father Daniel arrived among the Huron people, he found not savages to be subdued, but souls to be cherished. He listened. He learned. For months he immersed himself in their language, their customs, their songs. He watched the rhythm of their daily life, the gentle tending of fires, the shaping of canoes, the storytelling around the hearth, and he saw something divine in it all. The Huron tongue was musical, poetic. And so, to teach the faith, Daniel composed hymns in their own words. He set prayers to familiar melodies so that the children might sing the truths of the gospel in the language of their hearts. He didn't simply bring Christianity, he incarnated it in their culture. It was an act of profound humility, one that speaks to us still. For today, in a world that seems divided by race, language and ideology, Daniel's approach reminds us that true faith does not bulldoze culture. It embraces it, learns from it, and sanctifies it. It is not enough to speak at one another. Like Daniel, we must first learn to listen. Life in the missions was harsh. Winters were merciless, food scarce. Diseases spread swiftly through the villages, carried by traders and travellers. Yet in those dark seasons, Daniel shone as a beacon of compassion. When sickness swept through Kahiage, he did not retreat behind the mission walls. He went from cabin to cabin, carrying medicine, comfort, and the promise of hope. He baptized the dying, cradled, fevered children and prayed with grieving families. To many, he was not merely a priest. He was a friend. In the stillness of those winter nights, surrounded by suffering and loss, his ministry was one of presence. And this, too, speaks to us. In an age when loneliness and despair are often hidden behind digital screens, we are tempted to offer help from a distance, to express compassion through a click. But Anthony Daniel shows us that real love demands presence, the courage to stand in the midst of pain, to reach out a steady hand when others withdraw. Yet compassion was only one side of his mission. The other was courage. For the early Jesuits lived among warring nations, the Hurons, the Iroquois, the Algonquin, each entangled in a complex web of alliances and ancient grievances. The arrival of Europeans had only sharpened the blade of conflict. Rumours of Iroquois raids haunted the villages. And so, when one fateful dawn in July 1648, the cry went up, "Iroquois! Iroquois!" Daniel knew his time had come. Background shouts, Iroquois! Iroquois! He was in the chapel, leading his people in prayer. Arrows pierced the air. The huts burned. Yet Father Daniel did not flee. He rushed to baptize the sick, to absolve the dying, to bring peace to those in terror. Then, as the attackers drew near, he stepped outside the chapel, arms raised, imploring them to spare his flock. They did not. Arrows struck him, one after another. Still he stood, a lone figure against the blaze, until the fire consumed both him and the church he loved. He was 47 years old. Out of that silence, a question rises for us. What would we stand for if standing meant suffering? In our own time, the arrows are different. Cynicism, apathy, fear. The fires are of injustice, violence and division. And yet courage is needed no less today than it was then. Father Daniel's witness reminds us that faith without courage is fragile. To live with integrity, to defend truth, to protect the weak, to forgive in a world that prizes revenge, is to risk the arrows of criticism and loss. But as Daniel's life proclaims, such courage transforms the world. The years before his death were not marked by triumphs, but by trials. Converts were few. Success, by human standards, was limited. Yet he remained steadfast. His work was slow, quiet, and hidden, like the patient roots of a tree beneath snow. Today, when we chase instant results, instant recognition, Daniel's perseverance whispers another wisdom, that the most meaningful growth is often unseen. Like faith itself, it germinates in obscurity, watered by patience, tended by trust. His was a faith that endured, not because it guaranteed success, but because it was anchored in love. In time, the seed he planted bore fruit. The Huron Christians he had taught carried his memory deep within them. Stories of his gentleness, his music, his final stand spread among the lakes and rivers. Even in death, his life became a living gospel, a story told not in words, but in witness. Centuries later, when he was canonized among the 8 Canadian martyrs, the Church did not simply honor his death. It celebrated his way of life, his immersion, his compassion, his courage. And so, we ask again, what might this look like in our world today? Imagine, if you will, a city worker today, exhausted, overwhelmed, yet choosing to show kindness to a colleague who's been forgotten. A teacher learning her students' cultures, incorporating their heritage into lessons. A volunteer visiting the sick not because it's easy, but because love compels them. These are the modern missionaries, those who, like Daniel, cross invisible oceans of fear, discomfort, or misunderstanding to meet another soul face to face. To embrace someone different from yourself, that is, to walk the same path Anthony Daniel once walked. But there is another lesson hidden in his story, the sanctity of small things. He did not arrive in Huronia as a hero. He came as a learner. He built schools, taught songs, baptized infants. He made mistakes, struggled with language, faced distrust. Yet he persevered, faithfully, quietly, day after day. In our own lives, when we tire of small unseen acts of service, Daniel's life whispers, continue. Every kindness, every sacrifice, every prayer uttered in obscurity. These are the seeds of eternity. For Anthony Daniel, martyrdom was not a sudden event. It was the culmination of 1,000 small yeses, each act of fidelity shaping his soul for the ultimate offering. And in this he mirrors Christ himself, who spent 30 years in hidden labour before his own sacrifice. To live for others, to serve without recognition, to love without return, this is the quiet martyrdom we are all invited to share. Today, his legacy lingers in the land he walked. In the forests of Ontario, the air still carries whispers of that final prayer. Chapels and schools bear his name, and pilgrims retrace his path. Yet the truest memorial to Anthony Daniel is not a monument of stone. It is every human heart that chooses courage over fear, compassion over comfort, presence over indifference. His life is not simply a story of the past. It is a mirror held up to our age, asking each of us, will you listen before speaking? Will you serve when it costs you something? Will you stand when standing alone? Will you let your life burn bright for love? In the tapestry of creation, there are few creatures so small as to be unnoticed, and few acts so quiet as to be unseen by God. Anthony Daniel understood this, that holiness does not thunder across the heavens, but whispers in the wind between souls. He was one man in one corner of the world, and yet through him the light of Christ found a home among the Huron people and continues to shine through generations. Perhaps the greatest lesson he leaves us is this, that the most powerful transformations begin not with grand gestures, but with one heart surrendered. Among the pine forests of Huronia, the fire that once consumed Father Anthony Daniel did not end his mission. It kindled another, a flame of faith that even centuries of change cannot extinguish. And so, in every act of compassion, every bridge built between cultures, every courage born of love, his story continues. For the light that burns for others never truly goes out. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more Catholic history.